While they couldn't shift, couldn't make their skin tougher than Kevlar, their mad skills with any weapon was like watching magic unfold. The shadows were their natural home, and they used them to their advantage, slipping in between the light and the dark to fulfill the requirements of their nature. But sin-eaters weren't the only creatures who could destroy a ghoul. There was one more, and the other was an incubus. Though humans technically knew of this one, they believed them to be sex demons. In part, they weren't wrong. Incubi and succubi were re-energized with sex, but they didn't live off it. They had the power to entrance, becoming physical magnets to others. Unlike the gargoyle and the sin-eater, they weren't protectors. They enticed, charmed, and manipulated people into coming to them, into doing their bidding. They did this with their bodies and their sexuality. To them, sex was a weapon, and they used it however and whenever they wanted. Because most people could be led around by their cocks and pussies, this was a distinct and powerful weapon, not unlike the Lorelei. The incubi and succubi used their bodies along with their dicks or pussies as a weapon, while the Lorelei used their voices instead. Their voices were capable of magnetizing and hypnotizing people, letting them do whatever they wanted to that person. They could lull someone to sleep or coerce them into a rage, push someone away, or draw them closer. In a battle, the Lorelei and incubi worked hand in hand, both having their place as they controlled a crowd, using their skills in the midst of a war. Then there were the two shifter creatures, men and women whose bodies transformed into that of another beast. A shifter, when of age, would be able to morph into an animal. They were stronger, faster, and deadlier than a natural beast. They could heal almost any wound they suffered, and in a war against the ghouls, they were the perfect herders, not unlike the hellhounds. Hellhounds were a little different. They were wrath-filled beasts like Cerberus, but with one head. Although these mythological creatures had never guarded the gates of hell, that was just a myth humans had created when they'd seen one of our kind shift into the terrifying creation. They were ugly motherfuckers, with black skin and spikes so tough they were capable of piercing through bone. There was only one issue with the hellhound: their tempers. They were difficult to control and easy to anger, but in a battle, they were a wrecking ball. Shifters and hellhounds were the perfect soldiers because they could attack swiftly. The nest of ghouls a Lorelei had gathered on their pack's behalf could quickly be felled by a hellhound, who would raze them to the ground, leaving them exposed for the incubus or sin-eater's wrath. Finally, there was me, the vampire. Just like in human lore, I depended on blood for sustenance. Without it, I would be very weak, just like a human without food and water. That wasn't to say I couldn't eat or drink, but blood was my major food group. Unlike the other 6 creatures, I didn't have a natural pairing. In that, vampires were naturally solitary, naturally unique. We were a blur of the 3 traits each pair provided. Vampires were fast and limber, making them great fighters, and when injured, we had the ability to heal ourselves with sustenance. We required less sleep than the others, therefore, in a pinch, we made good sentinels, able to stay awake to guard over our pack if necessary. Our senses were like quicksilver, meaning that, in the darkest of nights, we could see the tiniest of movements. And though we didn't have the voice of a Lorelei or the body of a succubi or incubi, with our eyes, we were able, to a certain degree, mesmerize only weak-willed humans, though. That particular power was very limited and dependent upon the individual vampire. All in all, those 7 creatures